What are your thoughts on Kabbalah and the Zohar? I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this here on your live, but there are parts of the Zohar that talk about Moses and about how he had relations with the feminine aspect of God, so to speak.
Cosa que en una mente, that's why you have to be at least 40 years old to study it.
Do you want comfort?
When you aren't in a place to listen,
I'll share my perspective on the Zohar. Kabbalah, in my opinion, is the deepest knowledge of the Torah. It's very complex, it's very elaborate. In my opinion, in any case, it's just another explanation, only a very deep one. The thing is, the Zohar has content that I accept, but it also has content that I think doesn't fit. For example, the things that the Zohar says about non-Jews. I think they don't make sense. Like that they are klipa and things like that. It even has very strong statements against converts, which I also think is not the case. First of all, and this is on purpose, there are many people on the internet who teach Kabbalah and all that, and they will never tell you, maybe they don't even know, the things that the Zohar says about non-Jews. Imagine, they are teaching the Zohar to non-Jews, but the Zohar is super, I don't want to say racist, but it's very harsh. So this kind of content, I personally don't accept it. The Zohar was written in the 13th century by a rabbi. It is believed who was called Rabbi Moshe de Leon, but nowadays, apparently we know that in fact it was written by a group of people who were with Rabbi Moshe de Leon, and he was not the only author. We know this for several reasons. There is a text, well, let me tell you the story. It's interesting. Or not.
yes, please, sorry.
I'll tell you how the Zohar was written. Suddenly, in the 13th century, reports start to emerge that they found a book. That Nachmanides found a book in a cave in the land of Israel, and that it was a book written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was one of the Tanaim of the 2nd century, and that this book was found in a cave and made its way to Spain, in what was the region of Castile. What happened? Many people doubted it. Some began to question the person who had this book, who was a rabbi named Moshe de Leon. They said, "Hey, how come? Is there a book?" "Yes, I have a book by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And for a symbolic price, I'll give you fragments of the book." Okay, fragments. So people bought the fragments and he gave them the fragments. And it was very profound knowledge. Like crazy. There was a lot of questioning about whether this was legitimate or not. No, because the depth of the text is that Rabbi Moshe de Leon was bringing things that were extremely revolutionary. So in the land of Israel, there was a person, a rabbi named Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco. Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco became obsessed with the idea of the Zohar because he was a Kabbalist, and he wanted to understand whether this book called the Zohar actually existed or not. He went all the way to Castile to find Rabbi Moshe de Leon. And about this event, I don't know if this is true or not really. Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco, who wrote a letter. In this letter, it's called the Letter of Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco. In this letter, he recounts his entire encounter in the search for the Zohar. Here's the thing, he wrote this letter in the 13th century. This letter was lost. But it was collected, a fragment was collected in a book from the 15th century. That is, the historical source we have is from the 15th century, recounting something that happened 300 or 200 years earlier. About Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco. What does Rabbi Yitzhak de Minaco say in our 15th century source? He arrives in Castile and asks people, "How do I find the book of the Zohar?" And everyone tells him, "Go to Rabbi Yitzhak de Leon, Rabbi Moshe de Leon." And he asks him, "Do you have the book of the Zohar?" And he says, "Yes, I have the book of the Zohar, and if you want, come to my house tomorrow and I'll show it to you." Not tomorrow, but come to my house in my city and I'll show it to you. Indeed, days went by and Rabbi Yitzhak of Minaco arrived in the city and Rabbi Moshe de Leon passed away. He had passed away. Things were happening. He was left wondering, is this book real? He asked around the neighborhood and an elderly Jewish man told him, "No, that book isn't real. It's a story that Rabbi Moshe made up. There's no such book as the Zohar." Well, he kept searching, but here you already have one view that Rabbi Moshe de Leon made it up. He kept searching and he went to the rich man. He heard that Rabbi Moshe de Leon's wife was still alive. So he went to see the wife. And the wife wasn't there either. What happened was that they told him, and they told the story that the richest man, the richest Jew, had taken in the wife, who was now a widow. And he said to her, I will give you everything. Mrs. De Leon, or former Mrs. De Leon, I will give you everything. I will support you, food, sustenance, everything in exchange for one thing. What did the rich man want?
The Zohar, obviously.
The Zohar. One. דבר אחד אני מבקש ממך, את ספר הזוהר, So long he asked for it, and it was the Zohar. What happened? The wife of Rabbi Moshe de Leon, the widow, answered him and said, Sir, with all due respect, that book is not here. My husband made it all up. Rabbi Moshe de Leon made it all up. And what's more, if you keep reading, it's funny because it says that she confronts Moshe and says, Moshe, when are you going to tell people that it's not a book by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? And he replies, look, food doesn't buy itself at the market. So, entendimos. What's happening? Rabbi Yitzhak of Aminako Moshe, the market won't buy itself. The son Rabbi, I'm overcomplicating this. I mean, I'm telling you just as it's written. But keep in mind, this is from the Sefer Yerushalayim of the 15th century, recounting a fragment of a letter that was partly lost. Telling about Yitzhak of Minako, who was told a story about a dialogue between the wife and the rich man of the town. That is, it's not historically the only source we have, but it's still difficult because of this very aspect. Okay? Because it's, I heard from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone. Okay? But this is the crazy part, that in the end, Yitzhak from Minako arrives and he keeps asking, and he goes to one of the local Kabbalists there. So the man said, look, Rabbi Moshe's Sefer HaZohar, have you heard of it? And he says, of course. It's the book Rabbi Moshe de Leon had. He said, what do you mean? Yes. Then he explained and told a story saying, look, I didn't believe the Sefer HaZohar was real either. I didn't think it existed. And once I bought one of those fragments from Rabbi Moshe de Leon. Then I told him that I lost it. And I said, look, the text went from this word to this word. Rabbi Moshe de Leon replied, don't worry, I'll copy another fragment for you. And indeed, after a few hours, Rabbi Moshe de Leon came back and gave him another fragment. So, this person, when he had the fragment that he supposedly had lost, compared it. He compared the old fragment with the new one that was given to him, and they matched word for word. That is to say, there really was a source. So here, this is how this part about Rabbi Yitzhak of Minako ends. In other words, both versions are clearly implied. Later on, this is the part where we have to be very honest, and it's that great sages like Emden, you know? You see, they wrote a dissertation to explain the historical context. There was a phenomenon called the Shaftot, or the Sabbatian movement. I'm not sure what it's called in Spanish. It was a very tragic event for the Jewish world. But what happened is that there was a sage, you see, who wrote a book, yes, called Mitpachat Sfagim, where he gives about 600 explanations demonstrating why the Zohar was not written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. They are very strong reasons. I mean, first, because he quotes sages who are from after the 2nd century. How could Shimon Bar Yochai quote sages who lived much later? The Zohar contains words in Spanish. I mean, there are many things that are clearly from the Middle Ages. They are medieval themes, and therefore the Zohar is a book written in the 13th century. But my position is that it's true that the Zohar is not the book given by Shimon Bar Yochai, but what does it matter? The Zohar has very deep things. It's a book with incredibly profound wisdom. And that's why I believe that these aspects of Kabbalah are indeed very, very, very deep, and they shouldn't be made public just like that. Because there are things that can truly be confusing for many people. And that's why I think it should remain within very restricted circles. There is other content that I don't think should stay that restricted. And this is the position of Elia Abetz. And you're right, there were many Jews, even to this day, who do not take the Kabbalah as an authority. From Rabbi Kapach to Maimonides himself, he was against mystical themes. So, just imagine if Rambam was against it, who are we? But in any case, I think it does have important content, okay?
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I had also heard that for that very reason they had Because honestly, I don't know much about Kabbalah. I don't know if it's something really ancient, because if it were very ancient, I would say that even the miracles performed by the idol of Rome, so to speak, could also be attributed to Kabbalah.
It's not that simple because there are topics in Kabbalah that are indeed very ancient. For example, there's a very old body of literature called Halol, Va Merkaba, and Kabbalah has very similar themes. Considering that we're talking about, or for example, things similar to Gnosticism, and Gnosticism is a very ancient way of thinking. Although there are the Cathars who are from the time of the Kabbalah, but that's the Middle Ages in Provence, but yes, I understand you. I believe many things are ancient, but they don't have to be old to be valid. There are modern things that are also valid, right?
Thank you for the clarification. That's why I said what you mentioned makes sense if we consider the context of exile, or rather the Exodus.
Yes, regarding the Exodus, there's a concept called the Erev Rav. That's actually not so much from Kabbalah, that's from the Midrashim. The Erev Rav is something that's mentioned in the Midrash. Dice lo que. Does Kabbalah do that? It's explaining something else, because in the Midrash it says that Israel left Shishim Ribo, like a certain number of people, but there were also people who followed Moshe. That is, there were two types of people. Those who left because of the liberation, because of Hashem's promise to Abraham that Israel would inherit the land. That is, people who left Egypt for national reasons. That's the people of Israel. But there were others who are the Erev Rav, who left because of Moshe, that is, they left for religious reasons. Those who followed religion because of Moses were the ones who made the golden calf. Why? Because Moshe took so long to return, they became desperate. However, those who left Egypt for the land of Israel, not for Moshe, did not lose hope or make the golden calf. Many episodes follow this pattern. In general, okay.
So also in that sense, if I'm not mistaken, the Kabbalah tells a story that Aaron made a scroll and that in the end he made them worship the calf. Not going into too much detail either. And
Yes, this is in the Torah. In fact, it's explicitly in the Torah.
no, I mean that one of the stories that's told is that he made a scroll, and thanks to that scroll that was put in its mouth, the calf came to life, something like that, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember. It was a long time ago that...
Okay. As I said, I don't like discussing these topics in open forums because people get confused.
I agree that they say all that.
Okay. Take care.
Take care, and thank you very much, Jacob.